Green Bay Packer head coach Bart Starr has often told his team that to win football games, you have to win the fourth quarter. Taking him at his word, the Packers spent the first 3 quarters watching the Seattle Seahawks build a 20-7 lead. Green Bay's offense, which is the weakest in the NFC, ran true to form as they could neither move the ball on the ground or through the air. But in the fourth quarter, the Packers suddenly came alive. Quarterback Lynn Dickey spread Seattle's defense with some short passes and then sent Eric Torkelson, number 26, charging into the gaps. Green Bay's running attack was suddenly rolling along like Patton's Army, and the Packers smashed through Seattle for 2 touchdowns in the final period to win the game 27-20. The disappointed Seahawks left Wisconsin still looking for their first win. This Sunday, they might just find it in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's so-called offense has scored only 1 touchdown all year. Last Sunday, the Cincinnati Bengals feasted on the bumbling Bucs, shutting them out 21-0. Tampa's protective passing cup is a splintery crock that leaks defensive linemen. And quarterback Steve Spurrier has been sacked more times than anyone in the league. Says Buccaneer coach John McKay, we couldn't find the end zone with a seeing eye dog. In St. Louis, the end zone was clearly in view, but the path toward it was a treacherous one for both the Cardinals and the Philadelphia Eagles. The game was even into the second quarter, but then, like a pool hall hustler who's been trifling with his victim too long, the Cardinals showed their game and outscored the Eagles 33-7. We're not as good as we should be, said Cardinal coach Don Coryell, but we're getting better every week. Unfortunately, the Cardinals must get a lot better if they are to have a chance against the undefeated Dallas Cowboys this week. Last Sunday, the Cowboys spoiled New York's premier performance in their brand new Giant Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. New York quarterback Craig Morton was hit with everything but champagne and confetti as the Dallas defense stormed his passing pocket and sacked him 5 times. If Morton had been given more time, he might have been able to duplicate this completion to Jimmy Robinson, number 85. Although the Giants showed occasional signs of life, they were never really in the game as the Cowboys barged to a 17-0 lead in the second quarter. Robert Newhouse and Doug Dennison, number 21, tallied touchdowns, and Roger Staubach teamed with Drew Pearson for another. So far this season, Staubach has completed 74% of his passes, and he leads the NFL in yards gained passing. As for the Cowboys, they're the only unbeaten and untied team in pro football. On the left, John Ralston of Denver. On the right, Bum Phillips of Houston. The question, which coach has a better defensive team? You guessed it. Last week, the AFC's top two defensive clubs squared off in the Astrodome, where Bum Phillips' crew pounded out a unanimous four-quarter decision, including a TKO on Bronco return specialist Rick Upchurch. In short, Denver couldn't run, pass, or score a touchdown. And though Houston's offense hardly distinguished itself, the erratic Oiler attack did manage 2 touchdowns on their 2 longest runs of the afternoon. This one, a 14-yarder by fullback Fred Willis. And later, this one, a 10-yard study in following blockers by halfback Ronnie Coleman. Houston's win, hardly a thing of beauty. But an ancient Greek scholar once said, you can't win if you can't score. And Houston's opponents do very little scoring. On the contrary, Kansas City's opponents do a whole lot of scoring. Last week, former Heisman Trophy winner Joe Theismann tiptoed past beleaguered Chiefs for this touchdown and a first-half lead. But despite their relatively sound offense, the aging Redskin defense has become increasingly vulnerable. And despite their porous defense, the Kansas City air game remains first-rate. Incredibly enough, the Chiefs lead the AFC in passing yardage. Last week, Mike Livingston threw for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns, including this 33-yarder to tight end Walter White. But with less than 2 minutes remaining, Washington still led by 4. So the Chiefs reached back to their 1962 playbook. The flea flicker is to football what the Model T is to the nation's highways. You see it every now and then, but it's hard to believe it still really works. But last week in Washington, the Chiefs made it work for a 33-30 upset victory over the troubled Redskins. In Baltimore, half the city worked overtime to prepare 134,000 balloons for a pre-kickoff launch. But the surging Baltimore Colts don't need any gimmicks to win football games. Their success lies in a dynamic ball control attack that moves equally well on land and through the air. An offense that controls the tempo of every contest while covering gridiron real estate in wholesale chunks. In a 21-point second quarter against Miami, Burt Jones moved the Colts through the Dolphins almost at will. Wide receiver Glenn Doughty is but one of Baltimore's many and varied offensive weapons. Jones can call a lot of numbers inside an opponent's 20-yard line, and he doesn't hesitate to call his own. The frustrated Dolphins turned to 42-year-old Earl Morrall in the second half, and for a moment, the game's elder statesman tapped a reservoir of that old come-from-behind magic. But Morrall's fine pass and Nat Moore's finer individual effort merely reopened an issue that the Colts thought they had settled earlier in the afternoon. And so, Baltimore turned loose the sack pack to resolve the matter once and for all. Baltimore now has defeated Don Shula's Dolphins 3 consecutive times. This past Sunday, they won convincingly, regaining sole possession of first place in the AFC East. And as night settled upon Memorial Stadium, one could sense the end of an era. Last week in San Diego, the Oakland offensive line gave Kenny Stabler all the time he needed, and as a result, the league's leading receiver was able to pad his statistics. Massive tight end Dave Casper already has 32 receptions for the year, and last week Ken Stabler threw 5 touchdown passes, but 2 were called back, including this one to Casper. Later, Stabler again went to Casper for a score, when the Chargers somehow left the NFL leader entirely unattended. Ken Stabler clicked on 20 of 26 throws for 339 yards, about half of which were accumulated by former world-class sprinter Cliff Branch, number 21. Says Branch, "It doesn't matter to me how they defend against me, because I've learned that no matter what they do, zone, man-to-man, or whatever, I can beat them all." And so the AFC Western leaders broke out of their first-place tie with San Diego by winning 27-17. And now the Chargers have failed to defeat the Raiders in their last 16 tries. In the New Orleans Superdome, the Atlanta passing offense suffered its worst day since quarterback Steve Bartkowski arrived on the pro scene last season. Bartkowski and the Falcons lost 4 turnovers in the first half. The most damaging was an alert interception by Saint linebacker Jim Merlo, number 57. Merlo's 83-yard play started a landslide, which ended with the Falcons losing not only the game, but also quarterback Steve Bartkowski to knee surgery. For Hank Stram's inspired Saints, it was a rousing victory. A victory which ended with a scoreboard reading the unsaintly score of Atlanta nothing, New Orleans 30. When the Buffalo Bills checked into Shea Stadium last Sunday, there's no way they could have been ready for the rude greeting they received. Wide receiver Bob Chandler was left to count up his body parts, while the rapidly improving Jet defense gave O.J. Simpson another rough afternoon. 15 carries for just 53 total yards. But the Bills played some defense too, holding the once potent Jet passing game to just 7 completions in 22 attempts. Number 14, Alabama rookie Richard Todd, was 4 for 11 on the day, while another former Alabama quarterback was just 3 for 11, including his very first touchdown pass of the season, which put New York ahead 14-0 at the half. But with just 4 minutes left in the game, a Buffalo rookie defensive back named Keith Moody tied it up for the Bills. For a while, it seemed that all the winless Jets had needed was to get back home. But Keith Moody almost ruined a beautiful homecoming for the New Yorkers. Almost, but not quite. Because with just 48 seconds left on the clock, place kicker Pat Leahy stepped into the ball from 38 yards away. It wasn't the Super Bowl, but for rookie head coach Lou Holtz and his New York Jets, it was victory number one, and therefore a beautiful and entirely unforgettable experience. In Minnesota, Chuck Foreman's twisting forays through the Bears' conference-leading defense gave the Vikings a hefty 17-0 halftime lead in the battle for first place with their closest division rivals. But in the second half, it was all Chicago, ignited by number 34, their sensational scatback, Walter Payton. Payton, who is the leading runner in the NFL, scored 2 third-quarter touchdowns, and Roland Harper added another, which should have given the Bears this important game. But despite Payton's 141 yards rushing and a nearly flawless second-half defense, the Bears missed 2 extra point attempts and were guilty of numerous penalties that wiped out big plays like this 49-yard touchdown run by the guy who reminds so many of Gale Sayers. The result was that Minnesota, in a tough test, retained its lead in the AFC Central by a single point. In Detroit, the Lions' moribund offense roared to life for the benefit of new coach Tommy Hudspeth. Lion quarterback Greg Landry returned to top form by throwing for 3 touchdown passes, all of them to tight ends. 9-year veteran Charlie Sanders, number 88, pulled in 1 touchdown pass, and Detroit's second-round draft choice David Hill, number 81, caught 2 more. But the facet of the game that had the Patriots gaping in wide-eyed wonderment was the Lions' defense, the best against the pass in the NFL. Hudspeth's heroes sacked Cinderella man Steve Grogan 4 times and hounded him into heaving 5 interceptions, not all of them his fault. As befits the successor to the notoriously garrulous Rick Forzano, Lion coach Hudspeth's victory speech hardly smacked of overstatement. "It's the most satisfying day I've had since I've been coaching," said he. Meanwhile, Chuck Fairbanks and the Patriots, after a remarkable string of 3 consecutive upsets, might well wish to return to the role of underdog. For in the 30-10 thrashing, the Lions were clearly heads and shoulders above the New England Patriots. On an unhealthy day for quarterbacks all around the league, Cleveland turned to a doctor for help. With both Mike Phipps and Brian Sipe injured, third-string quarterback Dave Mays, a dentist in the offseason, led the Browns to an upset victory over faltering Pittsburgh. Luckily, Dr. Dave was smart enough to let Greg Pruitt do the throwing. On the halfback option, Pruitt's painful pass to Paul Warfield was the big play that led to Cleveland's only touchdown of the game. But it was enough because of 4 field goals by Don Cockcroft and the surprising fact that Pittsburgh could manage merely a single touchdown themselves. The prime reason was a furious pass rush by the Orange Crush. Cleveland's front 4 is hardly any steel curtain. They've reached the quarterback only thrice in 4 games. But today, Terry Bradshaw was sacked and pillaged 4 times by Mac Mitchell, Jerry Shirk, Walter Johnson, and Joe Jones. On the final sack, Jones' exuberance sent Steeler fortunes for the game, and perhaps the season, crashing to the ground. Any remaining hopes Pittsburgh may have harbored about a record third straight Super Bowl were shattered by a stunning 18-16 defeat to Cleveland. With Bradshaw out for the next 3 to 4 games and a 1-4 record, Pittsburgh's occupancy of last place in football's toughest division may not be so temporary a visit after all.